Blade Runner was directed by Ridley Scott, written by Hampton, Fancher and David Webb Peoples, and it stars Harrison Ford and Rutger Hauer, among others. This is a classic sci-fi dystopian film noir which focuses on Deckard, a former police officer who now operates as a Blade Runner, who is this sort of bounty hunter who is tasked with the job of going after replicants, bioengineered beings who have returned to Earth from an off-world colony searching for their master. Now before I move on, I gotta warn everybody who might be new to this kind of review on my channel, this will have spoilers for the classic Blade Runner. I really want to analyze this film like I do with these geek classic reviews, and I can't wait to talk about one of my favorite films of all time. Blade Runner to me is an inspiration, an experience like no other. It is my favorite sci-fi film of all time, and it is a perfect blend of both film noir and sci-fi film. Even though it has the initial appearance of an action film, Blade Runner operates on a rich number of dramatic levels. As with much of the cyberpunk genre, it owes a large depth to film noir, containing and exploring conventions such as the hard-boiled detective, the femme fatale, a first-person narration in the theatrical version, and the questionable moral outlook of the hero, the constant presence of crime, and a different perspective on the morality of crime through likable killers and through corrupt cops or figures of authority, blurring the lines between good and evil and making them indistinguishable. These conventions and their exploration are extended here to include even the literal humanity of the hero, as we'll talk about in the end, as well as the usual dark and shadowy cinematography. And let's get right into the cinematography for a bit right here before moving on these themes and conventions, because the cinematography here to this day is stunning. The cinematography, the set design, the costume design, everything, how the characters look, how the characters feel, the tone of the film itself, the essence of this film completely contrasts the cinematography with its electric and futuristic themes of exuberance and how rich this world seems while everyone is down on their mood and their luck and everything is drab and gritty and everything feels awful. This is an immersive world that you cannot deny that you would like to explore one day. It looks shitty as fuck given the characters that we find in this movie, but holy shit do I want to go into this world of Blade Runner and see it for 24 hours. This set to this day and the visual effects are revolutionary and they look spectacular, tremendously good to this day. I just watched the Blu-ray for the final cut before this review, and it is incredible how this movie holds up so incredibly well. But now to the character archetypes and film noir conventions that we talked about. When it comes to the likable killers, while in classic film noir they're presented as ordinary people put into extraordinary situations, in Blade Runner we find them in the skin of the bioengineered Nexus 6 replicants, who in Blade Runner are used in off-world colonies for various tasks such as ammunition loaders, pleasure for their masters, or otherwise. And despite at first being devoid of humanity, the replicants in here are in a situation that we can empathize with, being slaves.
Quite an experience to live in fear, isn't it?
And so in classic film noir, we get likable, charismatic killers, and in Blade Runner, we get androids who are pursuing freedom. That's their whole mission in this film. On the other side of the duality come the corrupt cops, where in film noir we find a dark and pessimistic tone with a lack of trust we can have in the police. In Blade Runner is where we find the police referring to replicants as inferior beings.
I've got 4 skin jobs walking the streets.
As well as demonstrating a sense of superiority.
Stop right where you are. You know the score, pal? You're not cops, you're little people.
This is the duality that helps create a world where the line between right and wrong is blurred, and at the center of the conflict between both sides is the inherent struggle of classic film noir: death. The pessimistic perspective perfectly fits the dystopian future found in Blade Runner, where we see that every character is literally or symbolically trapped. Most of humanity has left Earth, and those who have stayed really seem like they want to leave, but they are forbidden to do so.
Is that why you're still on Earth?
Yeah, I couldn't pass the medical.
And mirroring this, the replicants in their arc are trying to escape an unavoidable fate, that is, death. This is the thematic foundation of Blade Runner, life and death. Not simply in terms of mortality like in classic film noir. In here, the concept is extended to examine the nature of life itself. Now let's talk about our hero, played fantastically so by Harrison Ford, who gives a very underrated performance in here. He's very subdued throughout most of this film, almost like he's avoiding being charismatic, which we will explore by the end of this review, but he is a classic film noir hero. Deckard is a former policeman, and therefore he has no interest in chasing down the replicants, but just like in every hero's journey, this mission is forced upon him. We see that in his narrative construction. Deckard's Blade Runner plays what in film noir would be the private detective. So in here, he is able to explore the ambiguous moral landscape of the story. He navigates the web of moral complexity found within the film, as a figure who stands midway through lawful society and the underworld. He has no love for law enforcement and also shows compassion towards the criminals. This is demonstrated in Deckard's falling in love with Rachel, a replicant. And this is what makes Deckard so great as a character. He is very, very human. At first. Throughout the film, he shows moral struggles within himself and the situations he is faced with, and throughout most of the film, he either loses fights or wins them out of sheer luck. Deckard is the very embodiment of the moral complexity of Blade Runner. He has no love for humans specifically, but he also is not afraid to kill replicants, but he also falls in love with them. These archetypes of classic film noir and narrative in general are so well presented, but then bended in such a beautiful way that to this day they stand as unique takes on these classic structures of telling a story, and that is one of the aspects that I most appreciate about Blade Runner. Now let's go to the themes, because there's a lot, and I mean a lot, to unpack in Blade Runner. I've seen this movie for about 100 times in my entire life, wanting to dissecate it, and I am sure I'm going to miss a lot of things. So if you guys see something, or remember something, or understand something that I did not get to in this video, please let me know in the comments below. Share your theories and your takes on this fantastic cinematic piece. Thematically, Blade Runner unfolds notions like moral philosophy, philosophy of mind, implications of the increasing human mastery of genetic engineering within the context of classical Greek drama, and also drawing on the poetry of William Blake and the Bible. The latter is a theme subtly reiterated in the chess game between Tyrell and Sebastian, based on the 1851 Immortal game, which symbolizes a struggle against mortality imposed by God. The same chess game can be seen as a struggle of the replicants against the humans, as the humans consider the replicants pawns to be removed one by one. The individual replicants, who are the pawns in here, are attempting to become immortal, a queen. And yet on another level, the game between Tyrell and Sebastian represents Batty stalking Tyrell. Tyrell makes a fatal mistake in the chess game, and another fatal mistake trying to reason with Batty. Blade Runner also delves into the future implications of technology on the environment and society by reaching into the past using literature, religious symbolism, classic dramatic themes, and of course, film noir. This tension between past, present, and future is apparent in the retrofitted future of Blade Runner, which is high-tech and gleaming in places, but elsewhere decayed and old. There's a high level of paranoia present throughout the film, with a visual manifestation of corporate power, omnipresent police, probing lights, and in the power over the individual represented particularly by the genetic programming of the replicants. Control over the environment is seen on a large scale, but also on how animals are created as mere commodities. The oppressive backdrop clarifies why many people are going to the off-world colonies, which clearly parallels the migration in the Americas in the 80s. Also, the popular 1980s prediction of the United States being economically surpassed by Japan is reflected in the dominion of Japanese culture and corporations in the advertising of LA in 2019. Which is awesome, because I just always thought it was cool to look at the Atari logo, but now there is something more to it. And the film also makes extensive use of eyes and manipulated images to call into question reality and our ability to perceive it. All this provides an atmosphere of uncertainty for Blade Runner's central theme of examining humanity. And we can see this also in the psychological test that is used to discover replicants amongst the people. This test is composed of a number of questions focused on empathy, making it an essential indicator of someone's humanity. The replicants are juxtaposed with human characters who are unempathetic, and while the replicants show passion and concern for one another, the mass of humanity on the streets in the film is cold and impersonal. The film goes as far as to put in question the very humanity of our main hero, forcing us as an audience to reevaluate the very notion of humanity. Let's go to what was my favorite part to explore in Blade Runner: the symbolism. And let's start with what is most likely the most obvious symbolism, at least when it comes to this has to mean something symbolism. It's the eyes. Eye symbolism appears repeatedly in Blade Runner, providing the audience insight into themes and characters therein. The film opens with an extreme close-up of an eye which is filling the screen, reflecting the industrial landscape seen below, evoking the all-seeing eye of Providence when reflecting one of the Tyrell core pyramids. Also, in Roy's quest to meet his maker, he seeks out Chu, the genetic designer of eyes and creator of the Nexus 6 eyes. When Roy finds Chu, he says,
Chu, if only you could see what I've seen with your eyes. Questions?
I love this scene because it emphasizes the importance of the personal experience in the formation of oneself. You are not yourself, you don't have a personality unless you have personal experiences and something to take out of them to grow as a person. Tyrell's trifocal glasses are a reflection of his reliance on technology for his power and his myopic vision, and Roy eye-gouging Tyrell with his thumbs is a deeply intimate and brutal death that indicates judgment of Tyrell's soul, given the old phrase, the eyes are the windows to the soul. We can also find the eye symbolism when it comes to the relationship between sight and memories, and this is repeatedly referenced in Blade Runner. In Rachel's visual recollection of her memories, Leon's precious photos, Roy's discussion with Shu, and soliloquy at the end.
I've seen things you people wouldn't believe.
However, just as prevalent is the concept that what the eye see and the resulting memories are not to be trusted. This is a notion emphasized by Rachel's fabricated memories, Deckard's need to confirm a replicant based on more than appearance, and even the printout of Leon's photograph not matching reality of the Asper visual. It's so overwhelming, just the eye symbolism of this film, that I had to pause today to take my notes for this review on the eye symbolism alone, and we are not done here. There's also great philosophical and religious symbolism to be found in Blade Runner, and when it comes to religion, it's done in one of the best ways I've seen in film history. When it comes to talking about the Christian allegory in Blade Runner, we're going to focus on our Batty, Roy Batty, played by Rutger Hauer, who gives the performance of a lifetime in this film. He is such a great villain, such a great character, with such a self-fulfilling arc. I think it's one of the best character arcs I have ever seen. I love this character. I might prefer Batty to Deckard himself. I'm not sure, because Deckard is a hell of a character, but just, I love Roy Batty, what do you want me to say? Given the replicants' superhuman abilities, their identity as created beings by Tyrell, who mirrors God in this allegory, and seeing them as fallen angels, in this case replicants from off-world, makes them analogs to fallen angels. Given this context, Roy Batty shares similarities with Lucifer, preferring to reign in hell, in this case being Earth, rather than serve in heaven. This connection is also apparent when Roy deliberately misquotes William Blake by saying,
Fiery the angels fell.
And while Batty says this, Blake himself wrote, and fiery the angels rose. Also in his final moments, Roy creates a stigmata by driving a nail into his hand and becomes a Christ-like figure by sacrificing himself for Deckard. Upon his death, a dove appears to symbolize Roy's soul ascending into the heavens. You see why this guy is such a badass and such a self-fulfilling character, because nobody gave him any shit in this film. This guy had to fight tooth and nail with everything he had to accomplish anything, and still apparently failing in his mission upon the ending of the film. This is why Roy Batty deserves more recognition and more respect as one of the top 10 villains of all time, which yes is debatable, because I can see a lot of people questioning, is he really a villain? Which I myself question day in and day out. And now to our final topic when it comes to themes in Blade Runner, and that is environment and globalization. The climate in the city of LA in 2019 is very different from the 80s, or today's for that matter. It is strongly implied that the industrial pollution has adversely affected planet Earth's environment, i.e. global warming and global dimming. This is also made clear by the fact that real animals are rare in Blade Runner, which ties into Deckard's comment about Dr. Tyrell's artificial owl.
Must be expensive.
This not only being very witty and very Deckard-like, it is also a subtle reference to the book. Globalization is also reflected in the name of the Chamago Dominguez Corporation, whose slogan proclaims, "Helping America into the New World." This indicates that a mass migration is occurring, as there is a status quo that people want to escape, when Sebastian remarks,
No housing shortage around here. Plenty of room for everybody.
it mirrors the late 20th century problems of white flight and the resulting urban decay in Western cities, but on a worldwide scale. The cultural and religious mixing can also be verified at the scene where Deckard chases Zora. In the streets, we see people dressed traditionally as Jews, Hare Christians, and as young boys dressed as punks. Now let's get to Gaff and to Deckard, because throughout this film we have Gaff not showing a lot of compassion and empathy in himself toward Deckard. And we see this lack of empathy and compassion through most characters of the film demonstrated towards the Replicants, while Deckard stands out as the only human who demonstrates such emotions towards Replicants. And then in comes the unicorn dream, where we have Deckard dreaming of a unicorn in a scene in which its themes and concepts, or what it's trying to say, is not brought up ever again in the film. And yes, this unicorn dream is only found in the final cut, which is said by the director Ridley Scott himself to be the official version, and also is said by Denis Villeneuve, the director of 2049, to be the version you should watch, even though you should watch any version of the film into 2049. And by the end of the film, Gaff comes to Deckard and gives him this little piece of a unicorn in origami. This to me proves that Deckard is a replicant. However, it is not explained ever or seen throughout many visuals of the film, not with the eyes or ever, that he is a replicant. Is he a replicant? Yes, but what I really ask is he a replicant like the others? Was Deckard born a replicant? Was he a former human who became a replicant, either against his will or by sheer will and voluntarily, unlike RoboCop for instance? He could be a Christ-like figure himself in that sense. Even after Ridley Scott came in an interview and said, yes, he is a replicant, I 100% confirm that he is a replicant, this to this day causes discussion and speculation. Is Deckard a replicant who was once a human? Because if he wasn't, how can he dream? Or are these bioengineered memories like Rachel's? Blade Runner is a film that has inspired me throughout my life. As I said, it is my favorite sci-fi film of all time. The colors, the cinematography, its characters, its world, its themes, and the exploration of them, everything that I can analyze in this film, I find a new layer every time I watch Blade Runner, because it is so deep when it comes not only to its technical aspects, but also to what the story is trying to say, to what the story is trying to prove, to what the story is asking of its audience. It is a challenging film. To this day, it stands as a film that is thought-provoking and defies expectations and conventions. It makes the best out of sci-fi and the film noir genre, and it complements both those genres very well. That is what makes Blade Runner a masterpiece for me. Because Blade Runner is a think piece of its themes as well as a remix of two of cinema's most acclaimed and celebrated genres, exploring and giving new perspectives on deep themes, character archetypes, bending story structure upon itself, and ultimately becoming something more and something in itself. It has shaped countless other sci-fi films and how they are made and what issues they tackle and how they tackle them, while also standing the test of time in its technical aspects, as well as kept on being thought-provoking and full of layers after 35 years. There's a lot that you can learn from Blade Runner when analyzing film noir, but I will say this, you can learn a lot from film noir if you analyze Blade Runner. It is one of the most intricate narratives I have ever seen in my life, one of cinema's greatest pieces, and Blade Runner is a masterpiece of both its genres and the stuff that dreams are made of. What did you think of Blade Runner, my beautiful geekies? Are you as big of a fan as I am? Do you love it? Do you hate it? Do you think it's good but you don't love it? Are you excited for Blade Runner 2049? Thank you so much for watching. You guys are the freaking best. 2 days till I see Blade Runner 2049 and give you my review. I can't wait for that movie, but I hope to see you there. Share this video, comment your thoughts, and so until 2049, you stay beautiful, you stay geeky, and if you haven't done so yet, click the subscribe button and the bell so you can be geeky united!